Welcome to another episode of the Laura the Library Lady podcast, a production of the Massillon Public Library.
Hi, it's Laura the Library Lady here today, broadcasting from high atop the Massillon Public Library in our studio with Becca Moore of the Massillon City Schools and, of course, wife of Coach Nate Moore. And joining us from Florida is Scott Ryan. The two of them have authored a book called Massillon Against the World that's going to be coming out this March. So welcome, Becca. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry about those late fees for those books that I haven't returned yet.
We don't have late fees anymore, Scott, so clearly you haven't been here for a while.
Oh my gosh, I can finally return all these copies.
Feel free to come back to the Massillon Public Library. We do not have fines. No. Now, if you never return them, yes, of course, you have to pay the bill, but otherwise, no punishment.
I'm definitely returning all those Agatha Christie books. They'll be there soon.
Thank you. No punishment. Well, I'm really excited that I've gotten to see the preview copy of the new book, and you guys are going to be all around town showing that and making that available for purchase in March with your opening, and you're going to be at our local author fair. So, it's the story of the 2023 Massillon Tiger football team. So how did you get started with the idea to write this?
Well, I think I'll let Scott tell that story because I think you got to figure out how did Scott and I get to know each other, first, because he's just like this crazy Section 14 fan.
Well, I moved to Florida. I lived in Massillon for most of my life. But I moved to Florida after COVID, and I was just accustomed to always hearing about the Tigers. Like, if you live in Massillon, that's what you hear about. And strangely, down here in Sarasota, Florida, they don't cover the Tigers.
Why not?
It's so strange. I know. So I came up with this crazy idea of starting a YouTube series for people who were kind of out of town that could get the news of what was going on with the Tigers. So I contacted Becca and asked her if we could start Tiger Talk, and she was in right away. And we've been doing that for 2 years now. It's up on YouTube. We cover every week. And then this season was just so magical. I said to Becca, if they win, I really think we should do a book. And Becca said, we're going to win. We're going to win. There's no way.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so we ended up doing the book.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So that's really how it came about. Like, well, originally we were like, oh, well, we're doing Tiger Talk. We can just, it'll be easy. We'll just take a book because it's easy to write a book, right?
Oh, sure. Everybody can write a book.
Everybody thinks they can write a book. I mean, I didn't realize how difficult it and time consuming maybe. I think maybe time consuming I knew, but like it's very the stages that you have to go through to write the book. So that was the start of it. So yeah, that's how it came about. But I really did feel like this season was going to be magical. And so I didn't want somebody else to tell the story. I wanted it to be from a fan's perspective. And, he's a super fan with Section 14. And then, also a writer. And we have a good time and a good relationship. So I felt like it would be a good balance of from the inside and from the outside of what it's like to be a Massillon Tiger.
Yeah. Now, the way it was explained to me was that you wrote every other chapter and Scott wrote every other chapter. So is that really true?
Well, we kind of fought over a couple chapters, right?
Tell us
neither of us could give up the McKinley chapter. We were going to arm wrestle, but I knew I'd lose, so I didn't want to get into that.
Yeah. Tell us a couple of chapter titles in there. They're really interesting.
Well, I think they're all pretty interesting. So actually, I forget how it came above. As we were writing the book, we were, we kind of put what chapter titles, but, we came up with the title Massillon Against the World because it's just been a crazy season. And then we were like, I think we were talking about how are we going to write about Massillon from the outside. That's a chapter. And then that's Scott. And then Massillon from the inside is kind of give a perspective from a coach's wife and having players that play and then introducing the kids and stuff. But really because of the book title being Massillon Against the World, we really tried to stick to like Massillon against itself. Like, you know, sometimes we're fighting ourselves and then, you know, get against Titletown. You know, so Scott was able, he's very clever with words. So then we just picked certain games that were kind of important to the season and to Coach Moore scheduling those games, because that's really how you can get ranked in the nation nationally. You've got to play tough
Good
teams. You got to play good teams. And I'm not saying no one from Stark County is good, but you need to be, you know, you want to be ranked, you got to play nationally ranked teams.
And so that's kind of one of the things, just as an aside here, that's why Coach Moore isn't here today, because he does a lot more than just coach each game. Yeah. You know, he works with the students, he works with other coaches all the time, scheduling and doing other things throughout the year. So.
And scheduling's tough because we're an independent. So like we're not in the federal league, or we're not in a league. So like we don't have just 6 games automatically. So when people are like, why do you get so many home games? Well, because we're not in a league and we can say, you got to come play us here. And I think that was an interesting, Scott kind of did a really good job of describing that. I'm not sure which chapter it was, but just about, you know, coming into these games and having to play in Massillon. Not only is it an experience for them, but, you know, the coaches kind of explain like you're coming into a hostile environment, you know, because our fans are very passionate. And so that's kind of how the titles came about, really just interviewing the coaches. And I think we did the first interview, right, Scott? And we were kind of like, oh, I don't know where this book is going.
Yeah, I mean,
we were a little nervous.
Yeah, I think, was Mazer our first interview?
Yes, Coach Mazer, yeah.
Yeah, he was the offensive line coach. And we just picked, like, I think we had 12 topics that we were just going to hit. And then, you know, that leads to the next interview, and he says something that's interesting. We're like, oh, like, let's follow that. And then we would sort of add that to our questionnaire. But we tried to ask every coach the same question. And so the book is basically an oral history format, which means that you're really reading what they said. We don't interpret what they said. You're actually reading it in their own words. And what you find is how similar all the coaches are and how much they love the kids, how much work they put in. I'm not sure that the average fan in Massillon really understands how much work these coaches put in from January through December.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you only get 30 days off because the state makes you take 30 days off. So, but they would take, you know, you need to take time off. Like everybody needs a vacation, you know. So, but it is really interesting for me as the coach's wife to hear how much the coaches respect Nate, because they understand that he works more, like he does work, you know, 12 months out of the year. Right. You know, so like he was supposed to be here today, but a college coach is coming in, and if you want to get your kids recruited, you gotta be there, because our goal always is, whether they're Division 1, 2, or 3, or they just want to go on academics, is to help our kids get to the, you know, to the next
level in college.
You know, educationally, not only on the field, you know, off the field also.
Right.
So it's important, and I think that kind of reflects a little bit in the book. Like we don't really touch on that as much, but I do love the last chapter, and that's for the city, and I one of the coaches was like, that's what you should name the book, For the City. And then Scott's like, oh, that's going to be the last chapter. So I really do love that chapter, and I hope people in the city love that chapter, because it's really good.
I can't wait to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks really interesting, the parts I was paging through. And, you know, even just your dedications on the dedication page, there's a quote in the beginning. I mean, you guys have just really picked out some interesting things to put in there. And there's a couple photos. Are there more photos?
Yep, there's a couple more photos in here. And I just want to give a huge shout out. I don't know if you saw who our forward is by.
Yes.
So
Mike Brown, son of Paul Brown.
Son of Paul Brown. And
awesome.
That I literally cried, didn't I, Scott, when I called you? He was like, I said, I think I'm gonna get Mike Brown to write the forward, and he's like, okay,
yeah, right, huh?
And I think he doubted me. So I called him when we got it, and we got it pretty fast, actually. And I couldn't get through it because I was like,
because you were busy crying.
I was busy crying because it's just very like what Massillon means to people. we're not from Massillon, but writing this book over and seeing, talking to Scott and seeing his perspective writing it, and then the coaches that grew up here, and then even the coaches that have moved in, how important that win was, but just the tradition and the legacy and what it meant even to Mike Brown.
That's awesome.
Was pretty cool.
Because, 53 years in between, right?
Yeah.
So is my math right?
Scott, is your is our math right?
53 years in between championships?
I've actually been pretty scared because the Tigers won state championship. Then I was born. Then they never won my whole life.
It's your fault, Scott.
I was thinking I had to do a human sacrifice after we went 3 times and didn't win. And so this has let me off the hook. I'm my step is a little lighter. I'm feeling a little better because we actually could win the state championship while I was on the planet.
That's good. I'm glad that you shared that with us. It's very interesting.
I've been sweating it out.
Sweating it out, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, do you want to talk a little bit, Becca, about, the season?
Yeah, I think the season was, I knew this season was going to be different. It's so funny because I coached these kids in junior high. I coached track. So I had them in junior high. And I kept saying to Nate, like, that junior class and that senior, when the senior class is seniors and when the junior class is juniors, I'm like, we're going to be really good. And he's like, you can't tell that from track, whatever.
Yes, you could.
Yeah, we always argue about track and football. So it's because he's football and I'm track. But I thought those kids were special, but I really felt like the Aiden Longwells, the 2018, 19, 20 class, Terrence Moore, our son, I really felt like they set a tone for those kids coming up, And when you read the book, like Cody Fair kind of talks about it, like they did it for those that came before them, from the 1970 team to this team, like they had really built a tone. So I feel like when Coach Moore and I first came here, and we've been in 3 different programs that he's turned around, is like you have to buy into the culture, and that takes time.
Sure.
And people aren't always patient in Massillon or anywhere. Even in college, it's a big deal to win, and it's easy to sit in the stands and say things. I don't sit in the stands anymore because sometimes I'll say things like, I applied to be the running back coach when they didn't have a running back coach. And I'm like, how hard can it be? You just run to the end zone. And he's like, oh my God.
Takes a little more than that.
Takes a little more than that, Becca. So Travis McGuire came back and he's our running back coach. And I always give him a hard time too. And he laughs at me. So, but I think we just felt like we were on the cusp of something. And you can read this in the book. We had a little bit of adversity. The media covered that, and we went through that at the beginning of the season in June and July and a little bit into August. And I think that really did set the tone. How you respond to adversity is either going to make you or break you. And I think because of the culture Nate and his staff had set up, it really set the kids up for success. And you see that in the book, but I saw it in real life.
Yeah.
So I knew this season would be hard. And Scott says this as a fan too. He says, Nate always likes to schedule those real hard games, the first game of the season. And were we 0-3 or yeah?
Yeah, we kept losing the first game. And my thing is, let's at least win the first game next year. We're on a win streak. We've won 16 games in a row. We don't want to lose the first game next year. So I say you get a Division 5 Canada team in, and that's where we start the season. That's my suggestion.
And we actually interviewed the kids after winning the state championship, and Chase Bond is a big dude, and so he's Scott's saying this, and he's giving him the dirtiest look, he's gonna kill him, he's we're not doing that. So it's buying into the culture, and so I think scheduling those tough teams like Nate did, and showing that everybody had been waiting for that game.
Sure.
So it's interesting, and I think so. Nate set up. Okay, was successful the first game. How do you move on to the next? And he really did a great job, I think. And coaches say this, his coaches say this too, of, he won a game and it was on to the next. It wasn't, okay, McKinley's in 8 weeks, McKinley's in 6 weeks, McKinley's, he doesn't do like that. Or Hoban's next, or it was 1 week at a time. And the guys really bought into that, like more so than they've ever done.
Wow.
So it was interesting to watch that, because when we would interview them, even on Tiger Talk, they would not talk about past the next week, would they, Scott? They were
they
were
wouldn't.
like focused.
and it didn't matter who it was, if it was going to be a tougher team or a team that you most likely knew that we were going to win. They were focused, one game at a time, clear up to the state championship. So it was, they didn't go in, and I was in the locker room a lot more this year than normal at the beginning with the girls, or watching them rap, just like watching the whole process. And it was never, we're going to go out there and beat them. It was, we're going to go out there and do our jobs. We're going to be focused. And it's funny because I was at the high school yesterday, and a kid is explaining his job to a coach that's like recruiting him. And he's like, well, what does that other player do? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, what? He's like, I do my job. This is my job. So like, that's the setup that Nate has got all those guys to buy. And it isn't, you're going to go make that play, or I'm going to be the one that makes the play. There isn't a superstar. It's a team. Like, you're a team. So you go do it. You're the quarterback. You're going to do what quarterback does. I'm a lineman. I'm going to block here. I'm not going to run down and try to catch the ball too. Like, and defense, our defense was so good this year. And I think not only were those guys talented, but it was because they did their jobs, and that's what they bought into. I'm focused on this. This is my job. I'm going to do that.
I better work hard at this. This is what I'm doing.
And Nate sets that up too, because, he's the head coach, but he lets everybody underneath him do their job. And I think after this was our 9th season here, that buy-in trickles down, through your kids. And then it shines in the classroom, because, their GPA was higher than it's ever been. That's been a goal since we got here. So I think that's what Nate has done in the season. Not only did he win each week, but every week, they got better in the classroom. They got better
at doing
their
different jobs.
Yeah, and doing their different jobs. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
I liked what you said that Cody Fair said. And is he a junior this year?
He was a senior.
He was a senior.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's going in the Navy.
Oh, my
He's
goodness.
going to play for the Navy. Yeah.
I'm thinking he came to story time here at the library when he was little.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of these kids, I see their names and I'm like, I think I remember him when he was 3.
I'm sure.
So neat to have all that community feeling, and these families that have been here for a long time, and new families coming in. But that was really neat what you said that Cody said about, winning it for and working hard for those guys that came before him, whether it was recent years or way back. I think that's kind of a very mature and really interesting statement for a teenager to make.
Yeah. And you can see this in the book, and we do this in For the City, but if you go back and watch any videos or you watch any interviews, and Scott and I would try to sometimes get them to like just talk about themselves, they wouldn't. It was all about team, together. We did this for the city. We did that for the people that are wearing the varsity jackets that played before us. I mean, and if you went downtown after we won the state championship, everyone that got on the mic was like, this is for the city. This is for you. It was...
That's wonderful.
It was very humbling, I guess, like to experience and see people out there in their walkers and wheelchairs at 11:30 at night.
Yeah, really. I mean, we do. And sometimes I see those folks that are older and they've got, the old-timey Massillon Tiger gear. They've got the old-timey windbreakers and stuff that I remember my grandpa had. My grandpa moved to Jackson Township. He only went through the 9th grade here. He didn't get to go to Washington High School, but he was a Tiger. He had a Tiger flag out in Jackson Township at his house, and some of the people that are still with us now, I think that's really inspiring for them to, have been fans all this time, and now they've seen this championship here again. And maybe they remember the other one in 1970.
Yeah. And maybe, but I think winning it on the field during the playoff era meant a lot to those people, because I was telling Scott that the parade and, you know, being around town, it's very difficult for Nate because he is like already on to the next season. You know, like we wrote a book. He's very proud of the book, but you know, he's already scheduling the next season. They're already in the weight room. You know, he said when we did the parade, or even now when we go out, people are like, they just say thank you. It isn't like congratulations. Like they're just like thank you. And it's like we were at church Sunday and a guy just came up to him and I could just tell Nate was just like, you know, like he's very humble about it. But the guy's like, I just, my grandpa went to mass and I just want to say thank you, and like shook his hand and then walked away. And I was like, you can't handle it, can you? You know, and he just doesn't like that. Recognition, you know, it's very difficult for him because it's a team thing. And I was telling Scott the other day, I just feel like it's still hard to believe we won. Because you had so much fun at the state game, didn't you, Scott?
No, I did not. I was so nervous. I still don't believe we won. I was in traffic the other day and like my mind just went back and I was like, there were 7 minutes to go, and what? Hoban was driving, and they kept getting first downs, and if that kid catches the ball, we lose. And, like, the game keeps going over through my head. I don't know that I'll ever really believe that we won.
He was miserable amazing. During the game. He was miserable.
I just thought for sure Hoban was going to do what Ignatius did to us through the years, and so many other teams that just snatched it away from us right at the end.
Yeah. And so it's neat I try to take in, and Nate does too, like when we're out and people want to tell us stories, like I try to take in everything that people have said. You know, there's been a lot of books written about the history of Massillon and stuff. I hope someday somebody goes back and just like sits down and does an oral history of people just telling the stories. Mr. Salvino, our superintendent, told a story, and he said that a guy was in hospice care, and he convinced them to take him to the game.
Oh wow!
He was at the game. He lived through the game.
Oh,
he had
goodness.
To be so stressed out, and the ambulance was waiting for him when he left the game, and he said, "I can die now." Like I saw the Tigers win.
Oh my goodness!
And I was like so choked up because that's how much that this season meant to everyone, you know? And so the thank yous, I still get kind of like just choked up talking about it because it just means so much to everyone. And the thank yous are sometimes still difficult to take, but we're proud that we were able to do that. And I know Nate is super proud, but he's on to the next.
Yeah, proud and yet humble. And
humble.
That's hard, you know, to kind of balance that with, I'm proud of my team, my kids.
Yeah.
In our chapter, Massillon Against St. John's, we actually ask all the coaches about that, because I've always been interested in that, is how do you coach a kid to believe that he can exert his will over the kid next, you know, that's across from him, but also stay humble enough to not get cocky. You got to be the greatest player in the world, but also humble. Like, what?
Yeah.
And so all the coaches go through. And I think it's really interesting to learn how some of the older coaches had to deal with this generation of Twitter likes and all those things. So all of that comes through. And I feel like people will learn a lot about how they're coaching these kids to be humble, but also believe that they're the greatest cornerback ever, the greatest running back ever.
And we had that this year. I mean, we really did have some of the greatest players maybe Massillon has ever seen, and maybe they're not Division I or they're not Power 5, but they played with a lot of heart. And I would say that Nate would describe this team as a team full of heart and a team that loved this city and wanted to win for this city and for those that were born in 1970 who had not seen a win, and I didn't want. And actually, Nate was very adamant that we write the book, too. He was very supportive of it because he didn't want somebody else telling our story, you know? Because,
you guys are close enough to it, and you've been doing your show for 2 years.
Yeah, and, you know, there was it Go Tigers? Was that the 1999
The film?
The film,
Yeah.
yeah. So I wanted it to be,
Not an outsider coming in.
yeah, not an outsider coming in telling it. And I wanted the coaches to feel comfortable, like telling it. And then, of course, our principal's in here, Mr. Lautenschlager, and then, of course, Salvino, who's very supportive of our program and the school district and everything that he does for the community, too. So that was important because sometimes an outsider, and, I was an outsider coming in. So that's why those 2 chapters are important, too, because I tell what it's like, from the inside, but, like, really we're an outsider because we moved in here.
New. You're still new.
You're still new. Yeah. We'll probably retire here, I'm sure. Everyone's always worried, like, they hear rumors. And I'm like,
you're not going to move, are you?
We're not moving. We built a house here. My parents live with us. We're happy.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Well, and I always tell Becca that Nate can move, but Becca's not allowed to leave because we got this show to do.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's
because
true.
then that coach would come in and be like, "Who are you?" Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in closing, do you guys have anything you want to tell everybody about the book or about the season?
we are going to be at the Massillon Museum on March 22nd. That's going to be our book release party.
Woohoo.
And we're going to be there. It'll be that evening. It'll be
And
like
that's
a Friday night.
Yeah.
Of course. Friday night.
And they can come out. They can get the book signed from us. You can order the book at tuckerdspress.com and reserve a copy. It's the same price whether you order it on the website or you go. So there's no big deal. But then you'll
I saw a sale price. I just was on the website and I thought I saw a sale price. There was like a price and then a price crossed out.
Well, that's because we're selling it cheaper to match what it'll be because it charges shipping, but you won't have to really pay shipping.
Yeah.
It'll be $20 there, but it comes out to be $20. It doesn't matter where you're going to be. The book's $20.
Okay.
So in that way. And then we're going to be at the library on March 23rd. And then during that week, we're going to be at the library again.
Yeah.
So we're going to have all kinds of events.
Yeah. We have a couple. And then we have interviews coming up. But I think this season, if you want a real look to the inside, like we can do interviews, but if you want to really grasp what it's like to be work for Nate or to be a coach in Massillon, you need to read the book. And my mom read it in one sitting. I think she read it in like 3 hours. It's a very easy read. So, but if you think you're cut out to be a coach and you want to put your application in because you don't like how things are going, feel free to read the book. And I always tell, if people are brave enough to tell me that they think they could coach, I say, Nate's always accepting applications. Good luck.
That's a good one. Yeah. And here, read the book and get your
read the book
inside
and make
information.
sure you're ready to put all those hours in because you'll see. We did have 2 guys retire this year from coaching, but I think if you read the book, you'll understand why and all the time that it really takes for a perfect season. And it may not happen again. We will try very hard, but it's harder than you think.
If you scheduled the games that I'm suggesting, we could do the undefeated season again. This is what I'm saying. Put me in charge of
Scott, he's taking applications right now.
Yeah, walk on the beach.
I'm trying to schedule games. I was just walking on the beach. This is a true story. I was walking on the beach in Florida just this weekend. I'm wearing my Massillon shirt as always, and some guy came up to me and he was from Dayton. He's a Dayton coach. He wanted to schedule the Tigers. I tried to get this done. I brokered the deal, pass it on to Nate, and this is what I do for free. I don't even put in applications.
Well, okay.
It's harder than you think. But yeah, we appreciate everybody's support of the Tigers this year. Thank you for showing up. I really believe, and Nate believes, and the kids believe too, we don't win that game without everyone being there and being loud and being proud. So they played a factor in it, and find out what other factors you played by reading our book, Massillon Against the World.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Becca Moore and Scott Ryan, for being with us here today on the Laura the Library Lady podcast. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you at the author fair and down at the museum, and then last week of March here at the library again.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Laura the Library Lady podcast. Be sure to check out the rest of the episodes on the Massillon Public Library's YouTube channel. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many other podcast platforms.